Dear anyone who has lost a parent, all trauma induces a state of narcosis or a state of numbness at first. For example, the body's reaction to a traumatic leg injury is a kind of auto-amputation of the leg in order to isolate and therefore protect the rest of the body. The central nervous system, in an attempt to maintain equilibrium, numbs the area. The same narcotic phenomenon happens when we live through trauma of the mind. Unlike the leg, the mind's function is not as straightforward. Therefore, traumatic experiences that hit us on the conceptual level are harder to define. Right now, you are numb. A leg injury might numb the leg for a matter of hours, and then it takes months to heal. In my experience, the numbness after trauma from death of a parent, especially father because of what he represents, lasts months and takes years to heal. I think it's useful to use the term reintegrate rather than heal. The mind is an integrative machine. It helps us consolidate our world to the point where we can experience novelty and integrate it into a worldview. When a fundamental piece of that integration formula is gone, such as a parent, we have trouble integrating experiences into the once stable structure. This is truly a shock equivalent to a physical fall, like that feeling when you miss the bottom step, only the ground takes a long time to find itself. The first thing to do is to be patient. I don't know if there are any ways of speeding up the process. It's an extremely formative process, so it's not one to be sped up. I heard one time, the thing that takes the longest to reach maturity is the superior thing. It's easy to just assume the same life and integrating structure that you had before the trauma. In fact, for older people who lose a parent when they are deep into their lives, say 40 years old and up, don't have as much opportunity for proper realizations and new integrations. They can be too deep into their current worldview, and it would be too shocking. After things like this, people dive into their work or focus on being a great parent. Not to say that these things aren't important, but you and I both know that this isn't self-recognition. Avoiding or glossing over or not feeling the trauma is akin to the natural phenomenon of transference. Transference is when we become obsessed with the extensions of ourselves. The reality of ourselves is too overwhelming to consider, so we build elaborate defenses, stories, and objects to put ourselves in, aka extend or auto-amputate. I think it's worth elaborating on the reality of ourselves because it puts death of a parent in proper perspective and sets the stage for self-recognition and self-growth in a more transferenceless way. The reality is this. We are just creatures that live the most contradicted paradox of having infinite minds and finite bodies. On one hand, we are gods and the other brutes. No other animal has to deal with such crushing contradiction. This contradiction and the ambiguity that we must live with is the price we pay for self-consciousness. This truth is the main problem of our lives. Therefore, the denial of death is the main project of our lives. The practice of psychotherapy is intimately aware of all the various ways people deny death, although it may not be put into those terms. The first stage in denying death is as a young child via the mother. The mother's all-encompassing warmth, security, and love gives us that expansiveness. The best word for it is oceanic. Anyway, the mom gives us immortality in those very early days. As we get a tad bit older, we decouple from the mother enough to have our own sense of self, and that begins with a recognition of our body. We find we have control over our body, and that control gives us a sense of immortality. Quite quickly we realize as we defecate uncontrollably, grab clumsily, fall over ourselves, the body is not a safe haven for immortality. I'll quote Ernest Becker in The Denial of Death to help explain. In order to understand the weight of the dualism, infinite mind versus finite body, of the human condition, we have to know that the child can't really handle either end of it. The most characteristic thing about him is that he is precocious or premature. His world piles up on him, and he piles up on himself. He has right from the beginning an exquisite sensory system that rapidly develops to take in all the sensations of his world with an extreme finesse. Add to it the quick development of language and the sense of self, and pile it all upon a helpless infant body trying vainly to grab the world correctly and safely. The result is ludicrous. The child is overwhelmed by experiences of the dualism of the self and body from both areas, since he can be master of neither. He is not a confident social self, adept manipulator of symbolic categories of words, thoughts, names, or places, or especially of time, that great mystery for him. He doesn't even know what a clock is. Nor is he a functioning adult animal who can work and procreate, do the serious things he sees happening around him. He can't do like father in any way. Becker writes about a child's inadequacy to deal with the paradox, and then goes on to speak about the mother, body aka anality, and then father. The father is the next immortality option in the chronology of ways to deny death. So it goes first of all mother, then the body, then the father. The father has physicality that the mother does not, and the child, after just losing the physical battle itself, sees the father as the physical victory. Becker elaborates on this via Otto Rank's departure from Freudian psych. Rank thinks Freud and his sexual instinct theory was wrong, and that rather than sex as the primary driver, it is really denial of death. It follows that instead of the Oedipus complex where the child wants to kill the father with sexual instincts towards the mother, the reality is the Oedipus project, where the child wants to transcend the father and become the father of himself. The line between immortality that the father represents and the immortality of what follows, becoming the father of oneself, is blurry. It helps to understand the primary way the child and adults attempt to become the father of themselves, and that is via cultural symbolism. So after a few years in the immortality of the father in the physical sense, the child grows up into the immortality provided by the cultural story. So it goes mother, body, father, culture as the methods to deny death. The cultural story in all its intricacy can be elaborated for pages and pages, which Becker does. The quick way to sum up culture is to consider what everyone talks about: the who, what, when, where of all the comings and goings of trivial daily life. The how was your day, the long-winded issues at work, the town's drama, the Wall Street Journal, the crisis in the Middle East. On and on we have a collective system that allows us to auto-amputate, to extend ourselves practically infinitely, and to put ourselves in. This is why everyone seems jealous of the billionaires. These mega-wealthy, ultra-successful people have seemingly had victory over the cultural story. They are immortal to the middle class. Most people struggle their whole lives long on a seemingly linear trajectory up the status, money, and cultural meaning ladder to achieve this cultural immortality. The problem is, culture can't grant you immortality. We all know Jeff Bezos will die. But working toward the cultural elite is better than facing the reality of the non-cultural story where one is alone and striving for meaning in more individual ways. There's security in the cultural bosom. There are other adult solutions within culture to deny death, such as a significant other or an artistic pursuit. Becker calls these the romantic solution and the creative solution, respectively. Both of these will fail in the end. No cultural solution, no husband or wife or even child, no great work of art will give man what he really wants, which is immortality. This is why Christianity was so genius. It gave people immortality via the very conditions of life. The only way to go to heaven is by living properly. This is genius. We live in a tough time that sits somewhere between religious immortality and scientific immortality. We haven't cracked the code on aging or uploading ourselves into the cloud, but we already denounced classic religions. Becker writes beautifully about how some cultural immortality eras are stronger than others. I quote, "The great perplexity of our time, the churning of our age, is that the youth have sensed, for better or worse, a great social historical truth, that just as there are useless self-sacrifices in unjust wars, so too is there an ignoble heroics of whole societies. It can be the viciously destructive heroics of Hitler's Germany, or the plain, debasing, and silly heroics of the acquisition and display of consumer goods, the piling up of money and privilege that now characterizes whole ways of life, both capitalist and Soviet." End quote. The book was written in the 70s, but that quote will be relevant for eternity. When my dad died, what really happened to me was the cultural story got revealed as just intermediate BS. So, it was much bigger than simply a friend or idol passing away. It was the passing away of the primary structure of meaning I had been creating for decades. My dad was the one who showed culture to me, who seemingly believed in it. Culture let him down, just like it will inevitably let all of us down. Rather than thinking, oh, he just didn't do culture correctly, which is crazy, I realized that culture is a bad solution to life. All the dumb who, what, where, when details of daily life lost their significance. Another way of putting it is that my conflict environment shifted out of culture conflicts. The questions I started asking transcended culture. I graduated from wanting cultural significance to wanting cosmic significance. So, my cosmic conflict started, and I really started asking deeper questions about meaning of life, death, and more spiritual matters. Before these spiritual matters existed as some type of TBD that was far away, or even pointless in the face of culture. With death of a parent, culture becomes obsolete, and spirituality becomes salient. Now is when the guru mentality can come into existence. If the person goes through the denial of death progression of mother, body, father, culture, and can't handle figuring out how to formulate a personal religious view that they can live with, they turn to gurus. In a way, a psychoanalyst can become a guru, and psychoanalysis itself can become a religion. The endless effort to understand our individual inadequacy and fully accept existential guilt as reality can manifest as patients looking towards the person, psychoanalyst or guru, who has helped them get some solace outside of a culture that has let them down. Freud admitted later on in his life that psychoanalysis has a shortcoming in that it leaves the person unfulfilled without immortality. Maybe a guru can complete the vision of unification. When you are so close to fully realizing the paradox of mind and body, the last thing one wants to hear is that the dualism can't be unified. So the guru comes along with some Zen BS about mind and body symbiosis. So now the progression goes, mother, oceanic love, body, I can move my hand when I decide I don't need mother and I'm empowered. Father, damn, just because I can move my hand doesn't mean the body is my friend. Insert pooped pants here, but wait, my father can control the physical world in some effective way. Then culture. My father actually doesn't have too much physical strength, but adult strength comes from numbers and gaining cultural dominion over others. Then guru. Dominion over others is not the way, but rather peace, love, or knowledge. I have a set of beliefs, psychoanalytic or religious, that can replace culture. Better yet, I have Trump, who has gained cultural dominion and loves me like a guru, all in one. Becker sees religion that accepts the paradox as kind of the end of the road. As Becker puts it, if man has the capacity to imagine infinite beyond, why create such a narrow beyond of culture, or significant others, or even a creative endeavor to live within? Why not live within the most broad beyond possible, which is multidimensional creator, higher power, etc.? If transference is a necessary truth, why not transfer ourselves in a more absolute way? Total absolution necessitates an absolute transcendence of man rather than simple ascendancy within mankind's powers. Anyway, this is where psychology and religion meet. At the end, once other ways of denying death are exhausted, psychology only can get man 90% of the way there by explaining deep-seated traumas, or explaining with endless terms and monikers which condition or pathology you have. Once you've fully unrepressed those neurotic issues, it just leaves man standing naked and alone, staring at the void of the reality of existential crisis. In fact, the real question may not be how do we help this person solve their cultural problems, but should we? So now the progression reads mother, body, father, culture, guru, real religion of acceptance. In the end, death of my father really just kicked off the death of my former self. There is no hope for unification or nirvana or absolution. Rather, I try to find solace in the truth of the experience of life, playing the cultural games with others, knowing it really doesn't matter, and living life with acceptance in a yielding posture, with humility and gratitude. Maybe a sliver of hope that God exists in some way, shape, or form. I don't have immortality, but I do have life, and that seems to be okay, at least for now.